Welcome to the Fuse Show, everybody. My name is Jim Coleman, and I'll be your host for the day. I'm the co-founder of Xfusion.io, and today I'm joined by my guest, John Beane. John is a serial entrepreneur with 7+ startups under his belt, 3 of which have returned $1.5 billion to investors. After the last one, ecoATM, sold for $350 million, John joined UCSD as an entrepreneur in residence. There, he met the inventors of the MemComputing technology, and together they co-founded MemComputing. Welcome to the show, John.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so let's jump right into the weeds here. So 7 startups. I'd love to know off the top of your head, which of those 7 taught you the hardest lesson?
The hardest lesson was from a company called Bridge Medical. It was my second startup. And it was the hardest lesson because the first startup was extremely successful, a company called Pyxis Corporation. And then Bridge Medical, and at Pyxis, I was, a staff member. I started off as a software engineer. I ended up growing to, a director in the department. But then when I left and joined Bridge Medical, I joined as a vice president. And so while Pyxis did extremely well, I wasn't one of the original founders. So I did okay personally on the stock, but wasn't a life-changing situation, right? So then, and I'm still young. I'm in my 20s, right? And I go to, or actually, I think it was in my 30s by then. But anyway, okay. I go to Bridge Medical, and after having your first startup being wildly successful, I had the impression that, it's easy and all of them are successful, right? And now I'm joining this one as a vice president. So this is going to change my life, and I'm going to buy a yacht after this or something. And it was while the product was extremely strong from a technical perspective, the company wasn't overly successful. It did end up getting acquired, but actually for less than it had raised. But it was one of those things where other large companies, once we kind of opened the idea of that particular product, it was a product actually a bedside product for patients to help identify medications and make sure they were getting the right medications and things like that. Then other larger companies that had enterprise systems in hospitals started offering competitive but different solutions for that, and that they ended up eclipsing what we were able to do, unfortunately. So yeah, it was one of those things that by the time I left, I was like, this was the worst experience I had. And then probably about 3 or 4 months later, I realized, no, that was the best experience I had because it taught me so much.
I'm surprised you actually realized that so soon. I don't know, this is random, but I don't know why this reminds me of that. But so just this past weekend, I went out and played Texas Hold'em with my brother at a casino here in Colorado. And it's my first time playing Hold'em in a casino. And I was going in there, not cocky, but a little confident. And I was just overwhelmed at the speed of the gameplay. I couldn't calculate anything. And I invested $175 in my lesson for that day. But I told my wife, I said, I'm actually glad that I lost because it was humbling. And I feel like I would have gone back the next time, all cocky. And now I know I need to study more and I need to, do some more research and that sort of thing. So it's like, there was just a little example of I think what you're saying, and that like there's value in those humbling lessons.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've learned more from my failures than my successes. Absolutely. Successes, they're great. They teach you some things, but your failures teach you so much more. You at least learn what not to do again, and sorry about that. And things
not
of
a problem
at all. I feel like, at least in my experience, I absolutely needed some failures in order to then prepare me better and just kind of teach. And then I'll tell you the other thing about startups too is that it really doesn't matter how great your product is or how great the people are. It doesn't mean you're going to succeed, and you just have to work your butt off to do your best. But then the market is ultimately going to decide, and the best thing doesn't always win, And so, but you want to believe in what you're doing and do your best.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to our conversation and have been for a while when I looked at the extensive experience you have. A lot of the founders I speak with, are on the younger side, have one or two startups under your belt. And that's a compliment, by the way. It's like, I love seeing the gray, and I'm starting to get some, but I respect experience, especially when it's proven to be a good teacher. So I'm excited to hear a little bit more about that. But before we kind of go into the weeds there, tell me a little bit about MemComputing and what you guys do.
Yeah, great. So MemComputing is a new compute technology, a new computer technology that was invented at UC San Diego by a couple of insanely brilliant Einstein smart PhD physicists, Dr. Fabio Traversa and Dr. Ventra. And they basically went back to the drawing board and saying, what we know today, how would we design a computer from scratch?
Hmm.
They've been able to overcome different issues and problems that our current computers face that actually keep our current computers from increasing performance significantly. And if you've been buying new computers every few years over the past 10 or more years, you've seen that 10 years ago or more, when you would buy a new computer, it'd be twice as fast or be significantly faster than your last computer. However, the last, 5 years or so, as you buy new computers, they really don't feel that much faster. They're a little bit faster, but it's not the same. And
it's incremental versus exponential change.
Yes, and so we've kind of hit that with current computers.
Okay.
So the market now believes that the next generation in computing is quantum computing. So quantum computing is a new, also physics-based computer technology, but it's still in its infancy. It's one of those things. It's still, the experts say it's still 10 years away. It's actually been 10 years away for the past 20. It's
okay.
10 years away.
Okay.
But it shows there's a lot of belief that the performance is going to be exponentially better than what we have today. Just, fantastic.
Okay.
Well, these two physicists thought, what can we do? Can we do something using conventional technology? So silicon-based chip technology, and they came up with this thing called MemComputing, and it just is, it really is delivering today the performance expected of quantum computing, but we're able to do it on standard computers. We can essentially, and it's for specific problems, so it's not necessarily going to make your Excel go faster or your gaming go faster, but it's really geared towards a lot of highly computational problems that companies have that actually take them days or weeks to compute today, and we can do it in minutes and seconds.
Wow. Give me your favorite use case example.
So a lot of what we do is transportation logistics and oil and gas. We're also working with the Air Force on a satellite computational problem. But the probably the easiest one I can share, because we also have NDAs and there's a lot that we can't share, is we did a scheduling for a fleet of helicopters. So an oil and gas company has a fleet of helicopters that they use to transport people from a port in Louisiana to all the oil rigs in and around the Gulf. And and it's important to get an optimal schedule because you want to reduce the amount of flight time, the amount of wear and tear on the helicopters. You want to reduce the number of helicopters that you need in a given day based on the passengers and what have you. And we showed that we're able to perform those calculations in seconds. Today they can't solve it what we call optimally. They can provide a solution, but it's approximate, and because of that, it's not. They're wasting fuel and money and resources. And so we showed them that we could save them about $2 million a month, and calculated in seconds versus hours that may take them today.
Helicopters are stupid expensive, so I'm sure that's music to their ears.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'll tell you, that's the big thing. And with all the use cases that we've done for different companies, we've really shown them that because the scale of these companies, we've shown them that we can save them millions of dollars a month. So tens of millions that could add up to hundreds of millions annually.
Yeah, I mean, I think about so many use case scenarios or potential use case scenarios. The trucking industry. I think about like DoorDash. I mean, I DoorDash with my teenage daughters. They do the running, I do the driving, and we get to spend time together.
Sweet.
But so the other day we were sitting in a Chipotle parking lot in our town, and we get an order from Chipotle that's like 7 miles away. So we go pick it up at the other Chipotle and bring it back to a house that's very near to the Chipotle we were sitting in. I'm like, and normally their system is pretty good, but I'm like, something's off here. Like that's an example of like at scale, like for us for that one time, not a huge deal, but at scale, that's a major problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we've done for transportation logistics, we've done virtually everything. We've done last mile delivery for, which is what UPS and FedEx and Amazon do. And that's actually very difficult to create optimal solutions for. We've done shipping scheduling. We've done port optimization. We've done airline scheduling and even optimizing the loading of cargo in an aircraft. That's another complex thing that you don't think of, but you've got all this cargo that you've got to load under it, but you've got to load it in such a way that it doesn't change the center of gravity for the plane. It also can't be in anything that could cause any impact to the flight characteristics. And you also have, maximum weights, but then you have to fit these things in, and it's actually one of these problems that is hard to solve optimally today, but we can do it.
Well, those shipping containers are kind of contoured to the round shape of the fuselage, where boxes are square and rectangle. So like that's a difficult problem to solve for.
Absolutely.
Interesting. So what do you do, John, at the company?
So I'm the CEO.
Okay. So what does that mean? What is your day to day? I know that's a loaded question.
Yeah, no. It's somebody recently said the CEO stands for Chief Everything Officer. And
first.
As a startup, I don't have an accounting team. I do all the accounting. I do sales. I do all the administration stuff that needs to be done. I pay the rent. I manage the patent portfolio. I have a million mundane jobs that I have to do, but I do that. My real job is removing barriers for my team.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't want to bother them with, dealing with the janitors or the alarm company and all these types of things that you do. So my goal is just to make it so that they can do their job as well as they can, and aren't forced to do something that has no value to what they're able to do.
Yeah. Do you guys follow a framework? We're at our org. We have about 45 full-time employees, and we're implementing EOS. Not sure if have you heard of that framework?
No, and we're less than 10. We've been less than 10 people for 5 years. So our framework is controlled chaos.
Yeah. Yeah. What I'm learning is it's a real privilege to have the opportunity to get the right person in the right seat, and I find that founders and companies have to sort of pay their dues, where you're being a jack or a Jill of all trades, and it takes time to get in that, right seat for the person, which is what we're focusing on now. But I read a post on LinkedIn, and it seems to suggest that you guys are remote. Is that true? Is that still the case?
Yeah, we are still remote. This is my home office. We still pay rent in the building that we have because we have a lease, and we go in on occasion, but typically no more than 2 or 3 people at a time. I'm hoping maybe it seems like some companies are trying to go back in September, although the Delta variant may extend that. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're also working on getting some Series A funding, and if we succeed in doing that, then we're going to grow, the team by 3 or 4x.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, we really will need to get back into the office. So hopefully there won't be restrictions in being able to do that, because when we have that many new people coming on board, we've got to be side by side so that we can, the learning curve and training that's going to be required.
Yeah, that's certainly more difficult to facilitate in a remote environment.
Yeah.
Possible, but just not quite the same.
Right.
In your other startups, were you guys remote or were you always in office?
Always been in office. I've never had a remote situation before.
So how do you feel like you're doing with culture building, having been remote for some time now?
I think we're actually fine. I mean, it's a small enough team. We're very close. We have daily Zoom-based stand-ups, and on our stand-ups, it tends to be 50% play and 50% work.
Hmm.
So it's and my I believe that you work hard and play hard, right? And so and especially when you're dealing with high technology, it's important to have some mental relief, right? The people have to be so smart all the time. It's fun and useful and good for your mental health to be stupid
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
times as well.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we had a Friday dance-off challenge today. One of our leaders had the idea of, posting a video of himself dancing, and he's a far, far superior dancer to me. But I'm like, I got up in this office and did a little dance that was rather embarrassing. But, it's fun. It's like stuff like that. It's lighthearted. It's fun. It's a nice relief, at the end of a hard week of work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know if we'll be having any dance-offs, but that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, well, it's a funny challenge because something like 70% of our team has computer science degrees, so they're quite a technical bunch. But you don't in that group you don't typically see dance offs happening as much. I don't think,
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. You'd be surprised, but right. I've got a lot of physicists and computer science people. They may be that may be their hobby. So
yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I'll bring it up. I'll bring it up in the next stand up and see if anybody wants to do that.
Like, John, that's a terrible idea. Why would you think that?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I want to learn a little bit more about your time as an entrepreneur in residence. Tell me more about what you did with that.
Oh, that was awesome. So when I left ecoATM, I was looking forward to being kind of semi-retired. I don't want to retire totally. I want to keep my hand in startups and help people and what have you. But UC San Diego then came to me with this EIR concept where I think I had 10 hours a week or 10 hours, 10 hours a week that I needed to do office hours essentially, and be there for anyone from undergrads to grads to staff to faculty that were working on IP. And the IP didn't have to be with the university. They just wanted to start creating more of a environment where people can learn how to commercialize the IP. Because the UCSD gets like $1.3 billion a year in grants. So the amount of IP they've created is tremendous, but they don't know how to commercialize it. So
I see.
I was thrilled to do that because then I'm again surrounded by extremely brilliant people. And in fact, my goal was to just sort of continue doing that. And I had no desire to take a company out and work my butt off again. But then I met these two, I met Max and Fabio, and the technology was just so groundbreaking. And their issue was they actually weren't able to get, or I don't know if they weren't able, but they were struggling to get additional grants to continue the work. Okay. And they're theoretical physicists, so they live on grants, but they can get grants for a million other things. So what I really saw was that, oh my God, these guys are going to put this incredible technology on a shelf, get money for something else and do that. And who knows when they'll get back and if that ever will get taken down. And I felt like that needs to see the light of day. And and next thing I know, I'm cursing them because I'm back to working my butt off in a new company.
Do you think there's a part of you that like you just can't help yourself? I mean,
I can't. Yeah.
Why though? Like what's the root of that?
I don't know. I think it's a certain amount of insanity. I guess there are people who are daredevils, right? And they do death-defying things. I like risk. I'm not a daredevil at all. I'm afraid of heights, so that's pretty bad. But I like in business. I like risk, and what I've also found with startups, because before I did startups, I worked for a very large company, and you really couldn't get anything done, and you were surrounded by 20% of the people didn't do anything. They read the paper all the day and they could get away with that.
Hmm.
But what I've found with startups is you work with people who are all in it for the same reason. Everybody's in it to win it. Again, you're not guaranteed, but everybody's gonna work as hard as they can. And the company, the typical attitude with people who work in startups is the company isn't going to fail for my lack of trying. So there's this camaraderie of trying to scale a mountain that is unscalable. It seems unscalable with a bunch of people that are all saying, "Yeah, we can do this." And it just is somewhat addictive to me that I've continued to do it over and over again.
That's a snippet that I can't wait to capture. That's good stuff. Yeah, I, that's a great way to look at it. And I definitely feel that. On the topic of failure, back to the stupid Hold'em analogy. I talked to my brother, and he's quite good at Texas Hold'em. I'm quite not. But like the idea is, his hypothesis is, and I think this is true for a lot of players, that if you play in a disciplined way, you know your outs, you know your ranges, you know how you bet depending on the seating position, the pot odds and the odds of hitting your hand and all of that, and you're good at it. And then even better, you introduce a psychological element. You may play properly on pocket aces, and you may lose that hand. But the idea is, if you play that way in a disciplined way over a long enough period of time, you're bound to be successful. Is that a fair analogy to the startup world?
Not at all.
Tell me more.
Not at all. And I don't mean that in a negative way, right? Where I said earlier that our method is controlled chaos. With startups, it's always controlled chaos, because one thing is you have to be ready to turn on a dime. You may want to, if you followed a specific process, you may lose out, because as you work with your customers, you'll find that you were thinking you'd go this way, and they actually drive you this way because that's the need and that's what they'll pay for, really, which is most important. So you have to be ready to turn on a dime. And in a startup, you can, which is a lot easier than other, large companies. It's hard for them to turn, a big battleship. And every day, the situation is completely different. I call it the sine wave from hell. It's like without being technical, it's the roller coaster from hell. You come in on Monday and something great happened, and you're like, we're at the top of the roller coaster. We're going to rule the world. This is awesome. I can't wait. And then the next day, and you had no idea this was going to happen. You come in the next day, and all of a sudden, something happens. You're working with a customer, and that customer gets acquired by a bigger company. And that's happened to me multiple times in startups. And they get acquired, and now all of a sudden, they can't do any side projects. They got to pay attention to this acquisition. The big company isn't interested in small projects that they're doing. They're only interested in integrating this company in. Yeah. And so now on Tuesday, you're at the bottom and you're thinking, okay, we're all going to die. And then you come back, Wednesday, and another customer has come up that out of the blue, and now you're working with them. And it just, you just ride this roller coaster along the way, and do your best to, to keep it on the track.
So how do you know? So David, my co-founder, and I do a lot of experiments just to kind of see what sticks, and we're just figuring it out as we go. But I don't know if you've seen that. There's this meme, and this little animated character is, like tunneling underground. He's got his pickaxe, and he's tunneling through, and he's going and going and going, and he's right on the edge of all the diamonds. Just that much more dirt to go, and he turns around and leaves. And I thought that's meaningful to me, because there's this point where it's like, no, David, like this idea, we got to keep the faith. I think this is going to work out. We need to put out a little bit more time, a little bit more effort. But then you have the sunk cost fallacy, and then you have like, well, damn, in this case, it turns out it would have been way smarter if we turned around a year ago, right? Like, how do you make that decision?
Yeah, it's hard, right? And hindsight's always 20/20. But a lot of it for me is really listening to the customer, and to always step away. And I'll tell you another thing about listening to the customer. You have to listen to what they need, not what they want. because they'll always tell, because they don't necessarily know the technology or know the capabilities, and they
Mm.
will tell you, oh, we need to do X, Y, Z, and W, and this is what you need to deliver in your technology. And then what you really have to do is sit back and work with them if you can to say, what's the root cause? What's the real issue you're trying to solve? Don't tell me how to solve it. Let's
Ah,
help me figure out what the problem is. And then once we understand the problem, then we can apply perhaps even better solutions to get there. And so, yeah, there may be times that I've gotten that close to the diamonds and took a turn because you could also be led wrong by a customer, because you have to be careful too, and you have to think about it. Is this a need that this customer has that no other customers are going to have? So you have to look at it that way too. You need to make sure that if I do this, I can sell it to more people,
mhm.
essentially. So, and then what you may find, or what you hope to find, is yeah, there's some diamonds down here, but the big diamonds are here, and it's worth digging further to get to those, because ultimately that's the big pocket and that's the big win.
So are you kind of saying that we can look at this and say that there's really no playbook necessarily? There's no substitute for experience. I'm thinking about, I mean, you have a lot of advantages because of your level of experience. But rewind to the 20 or 25-year-old John, right? Like
Oh yeah.
what would you say to John at age 20 or 25?
Uh, well, I'll tell you, I don't. Experience helps in that experience, especially if you've had failures, right? You learn some things to avoid. Um, that, but a lot of it's still brute force. My first company, the first startup I worked for, this Pixis Corporation, Pixis hired, you know, primarily young, inexperienced people that had the desire to work hard and had the work ethic and what have you. And that company, I think, honestly, and that culture formed me. It created, and everything I've done beyond that is because of that experience.
Wow.
And and so in other companies, I've done the same, where you hire just a bunch of uh, gung ho people, and yeah, they're going to make mistakes, but they move so fast that they can overcome those mistakes quickly. And you try to apply your experience to help them avoid. If you see them going in the wrong direction, you try to help them avoid that. But the advantage is, a lot of times with inexperience, actually, I'll tell you, there's one thing that's great about inexperience, and it helped me in many startups, because each startup I was inexperienced in, what that next market was and product was going to be, and so I didn't understand uh, the word impossible, and I didn't understand the word can't. And in virtually every startup that I've done, after we've done it and accomplished it, and then talked to experts who would say, "Oh, if you had come to me before you did that, I would have told you it was impossible." It's like, well, I'm glad nobody told me it was impossible. So
Hmm.
experience is great, but in a startup, there's no guarantees, and you need a mix, right, I guess,
Hmm.
of experience and brute force, um, and and be willing to be wrong, right? I don't I don't give anybody any grief for anything that they do wrong, as long as they don't repeat the same mistake over and over.
Fair enough.
Um, I couldn't, because I'd be so hypocritical, because I made so many mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
But that's and primarily that I've done all high technology, all engineering, and that is what that is. You do,
Hmm.
it's all trial and error. You
Hmm.
make a mistake, but you learn from that mistake, and it teaches you how to go and do it better, and get around whatever brick wall you may have run into.
Do you still hold on to that youthful vigor? Do you still feel like, don't tell me I can't do something because by golly, I'm going to do it? Like, is that something that's ever left you?
No, in fact, that's another reason why I was really intrigued by MemComputing. That part of the reason why they were struggling to get funding is because people thought what they created was impossible. And I won't go into any of the specifications and things that we do, but if I did, it really sounds like it's too good to be true.
Okay.
Again, I made a statement. I said that we are delivering the performance expected of quantum computing with our solution in it, and we're doing it today. And where real quantum computing is 10 years off. Let me, kind of go into the scale of that. So physicists, PhDs and have been working on quantum computing for the past 20, 30 years. So and governments and companies are putting hundreds of millions and actually annually billions of dollars into quantum computing. So there's this huge hype and belief that quantum computing is the next thing. But we've done with less than 10 people in 5 years and I've raised $3.25 million. We've done more in 5 years than billions of dollars of and thousands of physicists, working on it. They're digging for some gold, and who knows, maybe the gold is or diamonds, and it's really big. Mm-hmm. But boy, it's a deep tunnel that they got to dig, and they keep running into more and more rocks. Mm-hmm. And we found a stash. Maybe it's not the biggest, although I'll tell you, it feels like it has the potential to be pretty darn big. And even if it's not the biggest one, it feels like, okay, well, they're going to the center of that particular cache of diamonds. I think we're getting it from the outside, where we're opening it up and getting those access to those diamonds, and then we're going to be able to turn right and get access to the rest of them.
I see.
So, so that was one of the things that people, and we still struggle with that, is that people think that this technology is impossible, and that, again, because that's been, I felt for them, because that had been my whole career, is people telling me that, whatever we were trying to do or told me after the fact was impossible. And I saw these guys doing the same thing. And we've been able to continue to prove that it's true. And in fact, we do deliver what we say. And it's just one of those things where we need to solve a variety of problems in industry. So real life problems. And so we'll solve this problem. And some company looks at that and says, that's not exactly my problem, but it smells like my problem. So maybe I'll give this company a try. And another company is going to wait until all of a sudden you hit this problem that smells like their problem. So it's taking a while to get that appreciation for really what the technology can deliver, but it's starting to come faster and faster every day now.
It's fascinating. I want to talk to you a little bit about the value of compounding. This is a rather difficult question for me to formulate, but I've been thinking about this topic a lot lately and applying it, of course, to money is the obvious one, but really more so in my life to relationships and to business and to sticking with things. And on the one hand, I've gotten value in kind of jumping around to a bunch of different things. I've had multiple careers. I've done a whole bunch, and it makes me able to relate to a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. And I'm grateful for that. But on the other hand, I've left things, places, people too quickly, and I've lost the value of compounding in those relationships and that career, et cetera. So how do you see that? I guess feel free to go anywhere you want with the question, but at least in the world of startups, how are you determining it's time for me to exit, or I need to stick this out a little bit longer to allow the benefit of compounding to take place?
That's a great question. And I can share an experience. So for one thing, I find it always to be, when I enter any startup, I am totally committed to that startup, and I'm totally optimistic and think this is going to be, the next unicorn, and it's the most amazing thing. And it's going to help everybody that whatever the product or solution is, and it's awesome. Mm-hmm. And it takes a while to, for that shine to dim. And then typically when I'm in that place, then I find it harder to leave the people than the company. Right. And, but as a specific example, I had started a company with a friend called Asteris, and that was sort of that was my baby. I mean, I have lots of patents from that company, and and was working it hard, and was actually we're in the process of opening Europe, and it was really everything was really exciting and super fun. And then I was approached by this company, ecoATM, and they were still in their infancy, and they needed, they kind of brought me on first as an advisor to help them. What my career prior to MemComputing was primarily around building electromechanical things we call kiosks. So they're it's oversimplified. They're vending type machines.
Okay.
But highly complex and not a real vending machine.
Okay.
So anyway, Asteris it is essentially a vending machine for your medications, and in retail pharmacies, so that you can go to an ATM-like device and get your medications without having to wait in line. Now, it's not a typical vending machine, because a regular vending machine, if you want the M&Ms and they're behind a Snickers bar, you got to wait for somebody to buy the Snickers bar. Well, if those M&Ms are your heart medicine and that Snicker bar is whatever, doesn't matter, and you get to the machine, you need your heart medicine. Mm-hmm. So part of the Asteris machine, we figured out how to essentially get anybody their whatever product is in the machine when they come to it, regardless of where it is in the machine. So I won't get into the technical details behind that, but so my background is in doing that. And then ecoATM, they wanted to create this kiosk machine to evaluate cell phones in order to determine the value of a cell phone. Essentially it's like eBay in a box. Gotcha. It'll buy your old cell phone from you. It'll evaluate it if you like, and it'll offer you a price. If you like the price, it'll pay you and keep the phone. If you don't like the price, it gives you back your phone. Mm-hmm. So they were going to start this company, and it's I have all this experience in kiosks, so it's like, that's really interesting, but this is my baby. But I'll join as an advisor, right? And then an advisor turned into I started moonlighting and doing work for them, and I started helping them. After hours, I would essentially work for ecoATM, and in fact, like I had a team, a software team in India that I used, and so I'd go to work, say, 8 to 6 or whatever for Asteris. I'd come home, spend a couple hours with my wife and daughter, and then I'd get on Skype at the time and work with my Indian team, and go to bed around 2 and just repeat. And then ecoATM raised its first money, and the CEO called me in and he said, you need to make a decision. You either need to go back to Asteris and give them 100% of your time, or you need to quit, and you need to come here and give us 100% of your time. And it was like, wow, that's a tough decision, because Asteris is my baby, and the people there mean so much to me. But again, from a startup perspective, we'd kind of already built everything that we needed from a technology perspective. And this ecoATM thing was another thing that was impossible and not done, and was a great challenge. And it was a really, really tough decision. But I decided to go full time to ecoATM. So it's just sometimes in fact, actually, what I try to tell people when you talk about when is it time to leave, there are times when I guess what I always tell people is you should be pulled. You don't leave for the sake of leaving, so to speak. Don't just take any job. Make sure that what you're being offered is just that much more enticing and is something you really, really want to do, rather than leaving one job and going on to something else and then being miserable when you were already you were happy. And you just kind of went there. Don't just go there for money, for instance. You got to go there because you're going to get more. The whole pie, which is including all the time you spend at the company and with those people and whatever you're working on. You've got to get satisfaction out of that, not just a bigger paycheck.
Yeah. Did you have peace about that decision?
Did I have what?
Have peace about that?
Well, I ultimately did because ecoATM was wildly successful.
Now, fair enough. But if it wasn't, would you still tell me today that it was the right decision at the time? That you
Yeah, it's always the right decision, I think. So, for instance, uh, one of the things I had noticed when I was, and so after I left Pixis, I was the next startups were struggling and just not becoming huge successes. And Pixis was acquired, and it was like acquired again, and then it was spun out. And had I stayed at Pixis, financially, at the time that I joined ecoATM, I would have been so much better off.
Hmm.
One thing is in startups, rarely do you have 401ks, and certainly not 401k matching. And so, I mean, I had zero, or not zero, but close to zero of a retirement fund. And if you stay with a big company, you get boosted in your salary all the time. When you go to a startup, you tend to take a cut in pay. And so it was one of the things I thought about at that time. I thought, wow, if I had stayed with Pixis, financially, I'd be so much better off. And then I realized, yeah, but I would be miserable.
Hmm.
And so I again, it's because what drives me are startups and risks and working on things that haven't been solved yet. And if ecoATM didn't make it, hopefully MemComputing would be my next one, but it would have been another one and another one and another one. And who knows, and then with some people there is no guarantee you'll get a big success. And sometimes you might find that you're going to have to work at, if none of my companies panned out after Pixis, I probably would, in my 70s be a greeter at Walmart out of necessity, not out of choice.
There's the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, so good. Let's end with this.
Okay.
I know that in the startup world, founders are often looking for that big exit or some future point where their dreams are going to come to fruition. How do you balance that idea with finding joy, peace, contentment in the day? You know what I mean? Like you get to the end of the day, maybe you hit the things on your to-do list, maybe you didn't, but you've got to find joy in the journey. How do you look at that?
Yeah, I look at so in the back of my mind, I'm hoping for that big win, but I know that there's no guarantee, and it's not, it doesn't happen for so many people. And again, it doesn't matter how good your product is. Just market has to accept that, has to be right time and what have you. And so really the joy for me every day is just building whatever I'm building. In this case, I'm building a company, and doing the things to help the company so that you're at least setting it up, doing your best in whatever your role is. Mm-hmm. To set the company up to succeed. I think what I said earlier was, with startups, people kind of have the opinion. A lot of people, it's like the company's not going to fail for my lack of trying. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to do the best job I can do because that's where I find my joy. And in fact, I'll tell you that after ecoATM hit and ecoATM was acquired, it went through my mind how it's like, okay, I've always thought that my startups are going to hit it big, but after it hit, only then did I realize how rare that was. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe it actually happened. I knew before that when it's not happening, it's going to happen, but then after it happens, you realize, oh my, there was no control over this. That was just my optimism and cultish way that I joined companies, startups, and stuff. So yeah, you really have to get satisfaction out of what you do because there's just never a guarantee that with a startup it's really going to pay off. You want it to, and that's a nice little star to shoot for, but you may not reach it.
So good. You've got a great story, and I'm really grateful that you took the time to share with us. Tremendous amounts of insights. I could talk to you for multiple more hours. We probably covered, 25% of the ideas that I had to talk to you about. But Thank you, John. And the website, if anybody wants to check out MemComputing, is memcpu.com. So memcpu.com. John, you're on LinkedIn. What's the best way for people to reach out if they're just interested in learning more?
Anybody who info at memcpu.com
Okay,
is a great way to reach us.
great.
Definitely on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me, connect, whatever.
Perfect. Well, thanks again for your time. I hope you have a nice weekend there in San Diego.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a blast.
Cheers.
Cheers.